Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our segment on Mystery Files. Today, we will embark on one of the most famous and perplexing criminal cases of all time, a story that has been etched into popular culture and continues to haunt historians and amateur investigators alike. The case of Jack the Ripper. A dark backdrop. Whitechapel in the 1880s. In the late 19th century, London was the capital of a powerful empire, but behind the glamour, slums like Whitechapel held immense destitution and chaos. Whitechapel was a hub for impoverished laborers, immigrants from around the world, and refugees seeking a better life. However, the harsh reality of unemployment, dismal housing, disease, and crime turned the area into a trap for the most vulnerable. Specifically, a large number of women, many of whom were widows, abandoned, or lacked specific skills, were forced into prostitution to afford daily lodging and food. It's estimated that thousands of women worked in this profession in Whitechapel and neighboring areas. The legal and police systems of the time had many limitations. Although the Metropolitan Police Force had been established, patrolling the dark, crowded, and complex alleys of Whitechapel was a near-impossible task with a force that was far too small. It was in the shadows and chaos of Whitechapel that Jack the Ripper emerged, the canonical 5 victims, and the horrifying trail. While several other murders occurred around the same time and in the same area, collectively known as the Whitechapel murders, historians and police later often focused on the canonical 5 victims, who are strongly believed to have been killed by Jack the Ripper based on the brutality and specific mutilation patterns. Mary and Nichols, Polly, around 43 years old. Discovered at 3:40 a.m. on August 31st, 1888, in Bucks Row. Her throat was cut deeply twice, almost decapitating her. Her abdomen was severely ripped open by a large knife thrust upwards, exposing her internal organs. The wounds suggested the killer used a long, sharp blade. This was the first case to establish the brutal pattern. Annie Chapman, Dark Annie, 47 years old. Discovered at 5:45 a.m. on September 8, 1888, in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. Like Mary and Nichols, her throat was cut with 2 deep slashes. Her abdomen was terribly mutilated, with internal organs pulled out and part of her intestines placed over her shoulder. More chillingly, her uterus and 2 other parts, possibly fallopian tubes, were neatly removed and taken away. The precision in organ removal suggested the killer had significant anatomical knowledge. Elizabeth Stride, Long Liz, 44 years old. Discovered at 1 a.m. on September 30th, 1888, in Dutfield's yard. Her death was different. Her throat was cut with a single, quick, deep slash, severing the carotid artery. However, her body was not otherwise mutilated. The most common theory is that the killer was interrupted, perhaps by the sound of a cart entering the yard, immediately after cutting her throat, preventing him from carrying out the evisceration. Catherine Eddowes, Kate Kelly, or Long Liz, 46 years old. Discovered just 45 minutes after Stride's death, at 1:45 a.m. on September 30th, 1888, in Mitre Square. This case was extremely brutal, suggesting the killer had more time. Her throat was cut, her face was mutilated, with cuts to her nose and 1 cheek. Her abdomen was extensively ripped open, organs were pulled out and oddly arranged. Notably, her left kidney and the greater part of her uterus were removed and taken away. This is the case from which half a kidney was sent with the "From Hell" letter. Mary Jane Kelly, Marie Jeanette Kelly, around 25 years old, the youngest victim. Discovered at 10:45 a.m. on November 9th, 1888, inside her rented room at Miller's Court, Dorset Street. This was the most brutal and horrific case. The killer had ample time and privacy in the locked room to carry out the savage act. Her body was extensively mutilated, organs were removed and scattered around the room, and her face was so disfigured it was unrecognizable. Her heart was removed and never found. The method of killing shows increasing professionalism and brutality throughout the cases, culminating in Mary Kelly's murder. The cuts to the throat were often from left to right, suggesting the killer was left-handed or highly skilled with a knife using either hand. Specifically, The deliberate removal of organs, uterus, kidney, heart, suggests the killer may have had advanced knowledge of human anatomy, or at least expert butchery skills. The failed hunt and the media frenzy. The investigation by the Metropolitan Police, initially led by Chief Inspector Robert Anderson and later by Chief Inspector Donald Swanson, along with participation from the local City of London Police, was a massive but difficult undertaking. Whitechapel was a labyrinth of streets and alleys, with residents often uncooperative with police due to mistrust and animosity. Witnesses were scarce and often unreliable or intoxicated. Police employed some new investigative methods for the time, including more careful crime scene evidence collection, profiling the killer based on the wounds, suggesting anatomical skills, and interviewing thousands of people in the area. Over 80 people were arrested or questioned, but none were charged. The brutality of the murders and the police's inability to catch the killer created an unprecedented media frenzy. Newspapers competed to publish sensational stories, fabricating gruesome details, contributing to the spread of fear and panic among the public. It was in this climate that the mysterious letters began to appear. The letters from hell. Hundreds of letters claiming to be from Jack the Ripper were sent to police and newspapers, but most were considered hoaxes. However, 3 of the most famous letters remain controversial regarding their authenticity, but they certainly shaped the legend of Jack the Ripper. The Dear Boss letter, received on September 27, 1888, by the Central News Agency. The writer mocked the police and signed off as Jack the Ripper. Police initially thought it was a hoax, but when Catherine Eddowes' ear was cut off, this detail was mentioned in a later postcard, leading them to reconsider. The Saucy Jackie postcard, received on October 1, 1888, also by the Central News Agency. It was brief, claimed responsibility for the double event on Sunday, referencing the Stride and Eddowes murders, and mentioned not having time to get the ear of the first victim, Stride, but having fried it from the second, Eddowes. The From Hell letter, received on October 16, 1888, by George Lusk, head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. This letter was accompanied by a small box containing half a human kidney preserved in spirits. The letter's content was crude, with spelling and grammatical errors, differing from the previous 2. The writer claimed to have eaten the other half of the kidney. This letter is considered the most likely to have been sent by the killer, especially as the kidney was believed to belong to Catherine Eddowes, who was missing a kidney. These letters, even if some were malicious hoaxes capitalizing on media attention, solidified the name, Jack the Ripper, and added to the case's mystique and horror. Suspects. The hunt continues after more than a century. The Jack the Ripper case was never officially solved, and after the Mary Kelly murder in November 1888, similar attacks ceased. The official investigation reached a dead end, and the file was closed in 1892. However, the mystery of the killer's identity has fueled the curiosity of countless researchers, amateur detectives, and the public for over a century. Hundreds of suspects have been proposed, each with their own arguments. Here are some of the most famous and debated suspects from mainstream sources. Aaron Kosminski, a Jewish immigrant barber from Poland who lived in Whitechapel. He was the prime suspect for senior police officers like Swanson and Anderson at the time. He was described as having mental health problems, hating women, especially prostitutes, and having violent tendencies. A Jewish witness is also believed to have identified him but refused to testify in court for fear of retaliation. Kosminski was eventually committed to an asylum and died there. He is the suspect most strongly supported by contemporary police historical accounts. Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence and Avondale, grandson of Queen Victoria. This theory, while sensational and lacking evidence, persists due to public fascination with the royal family. Some theories link him to social diseases or secret connections in Whitechapel, but no credible historical evidence proves his involvement in the murders. Montague John Druitt, a barrister. He is mentioned in Chief Inspector Swanson's notes as a suspect who died shortly after the last murder. Druitt was found drowned in the River Thames in December 1888, a month after Mary Kelly's murder. His family had a history of mental illness. However, there is no direct evidence linking him to the murders. George Chapman, Severin Klisowski, a Polish barber who arrived in London around 1888. He was later caught and executed for poisoning 3 of his wives. His method of killing, poisoning, is completely different from Jack the Ripper's mutilation, but his residence in Whitechapel and potential rudimentary anatomical knowledge from working as a surgeon's assistant make him a debated suspect. Walter Sickert, a famous English painter. This theory emerged much later and was popularized by author Patricia Cornwell. She argued that Sickert had mental health issues and that evidence lay within his artwork and writings. However, most historians and Jack the Ripper experts largely dismiss this theory due to a lack of reliable historical evidence. DNA evidence, a breakthrough or a new concern. In 2007 and reanalyzed in 2014 and 2019, researchers led by Jari Lohelainen conducted mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, analysis from a silk shawl allegedly found near Catherine Eddowes' body. The published results showed that the DNA on the shawl matched the female line descendants through the mother of both Catherine Eddowes and Aaron Kosminski. This caused a stir and was considered by some to be the final scientific proof identifying Aaron Kosminski as Jack the Ripper. However, these findings faced strong criticism from the scientific and historical communities. The main concerns include the authenticity of the shawl. Was it actually at the crime scene? And how contaminated might it be after over a century? The validity of the DNA sampling and analysis procedures. mtDNA only traces maternal lineage, not specific identity, and the fact that these studies were not fully peer-reviewed before being publicized in the media. Therefore, while intriguing, this DNA evidence is not yet widely accepted as the definitive answer. More than 130 years have passed, and Jack the Ripper remains a symbol of unsolved crime. The case not only exposed the dark underbelly of Victorian London society, but also spurred changes in criminal investigation techniques, such as the use of crime scene photography and fingerprinting, although not effectively used at the time. The enduring mystery, coupled with the brutality of the crimes, has transformed Jack the Ripper into a dark legend, a reminder that sometimes the most horrific secrets are never fully revealed. Will we ever truly know the identity of Jack the Ripper? Or will this killer forever remain a phantom lurking in the historical fog of Whitechapel? Please share your thoughts and theories about the Jack the Ripper mystery in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe to the channel to follow more fascinating stories and mysteries from our channel.